Hey everyone, welcome. We're going to jump right into a question that I think we all wrestle with at some point. Where does our value really come from? Is it something we have to earn, or is it just there? Let's dig into that.
All right, take a look at this. 300 million to 1. What in the world could those odds be? Winning the lottery? Getting struck by lightning? Nope. It's actually something way more personal. According to the source material we're looking at today, those were the odds you beat just to be here, just to be born.
Yeah, you heard that right. It doesn't matter if you've never won a trophy in your life. Your very existence means you've already won first place in the most incredible race imaginable. The fact that you're here, listening to this, means you are a statistical miracle.
So let's start right there, with this idea of being a 1 in 300 million miracle. Before we get into what we do with our lives, let's just sit with what we are.
And this isn't some new agey concept. This feeling of awe goes back thousands of years. King David, in the Psalms, looked at how the human body works and was just floored. He didn't see a biological accident. He saw something fearfully and wonderfully made, a deliberate, incredible work of art, planned out by a creator.
And what's crazy is that modern science just makes it even more mind-blowing. Our source points out some amazing stats. Your body is made of about 35 trillion cells, powered by 650 muscles, all working together perfectly. And from the perspective we're exploring today, your life wasn't some cosmic afterthought. Every day was planned before a single one of them happened. Your body itself, it's a masterpiece.
Okay, so that's one way to look at our value, but let's be real. Is that how the world sees us? When you walk down the street, does society see a 1 in 300 million miracle, or does it pull out a totally different measuring stick?
This chart really puts the world's value system on display. The source uses this example from the world of soccer. You've got global superstars like Lionel Messi and Son Heung-min earning these jaw-dropping salaries. And then you have a player like Kim Byung-soo, who has an amazing story of fighting his way up from the 8th division, but his salary is just a tiny, tiny fraction of theirs.
And this really forces the question, right? Is Kim Byung-soo less valuable as a person? I mean, of course not. His story of dedication is incredible. But the world's system, a lot of the time, links our value directly to our performance, our paycheck, our talent. But is that it? Is that the whole story of who we are?
Well, this whole struggle over how to define our worth, it's not new at all. In fact, if we wind the clock back to the ancient world, the standard view of a human being was actually pretty bleak.
So here you can see two totally different ways of thinking. On one side, you have these ancient myths. The source mentions ones from a place called Ugarit. And in those stories, humans were basically created from the leftovers of the gods, just to be their slaves. Your worth was all about what you could do for them. But then, the biblical account comes along and introduces this completely radical idea. We're not slaves. We are created in the image of God Himself.
And this really gets us to the core of what we're exploring today. The source material presents an identity that just turns the world's price tag completely upside down. It's built on two huge ideas, being made in God's image and being God's co-worker.
Now you have to understand how radical this was. Back then in the ancient world, only the king or the pharaoh would be called the image of a god. They were the special ones. But Genesis comes along and says, nope, every single person, man, woman, rich, poor, it doesn't matter, everybody bears the image of God. So what does that even mean, image of God? Well, it's the idea that we were created to reflect who God is, His character, His love, His creativity, and to help carry out His purposes here on earth. It's an identity that isn't based on what we do, but on who we are. It gives us this deep, unshakable value.
And this isn't just some nice philosophical thought. The source is clear that this value was proven, affirmed by the ultimate act. The whole Christian faith is built on the idea that God showed us how much we're worth by giving His own Son for us. That's the price tag God puts on a person.
But it doesn't stop there. This identity isn't a passive thing. We're not just supposed to sit around like priceless statues in a museum. We're also called to be co-workers, and that means we have a job to do, a really noble purpose, to partner up with God and help take care of the world.
Now, when you read this passage, you see words like subdue and rule, and let's be honest, they can sound a bit harsh to us today. But the original meaning wasn't about dominating or exploiting everything. It was more like, imagine a king who gives his most trusted gardener the keys to the royal gardens. He's not telling him to pave it over, he's asking him to care for it, to cultivate it, to make it flourish. It's a call to be responsible partners with God.
Okay, great. So, Priceless image bearer, purposeful coworker. That sounds nice, but what does it actually mean for us, in our real, everyday lives? How does this change anything on a random Monday morning when you're stuck in traffic?
Well, according to our source, it changes pretty much everything. First, you start seeing other people differently, not just for what they can do for you, but as someone who also carries the image of God. Second, your work changes. It doesn't matter if you're in an office, a classroom, or at home. It becomes your chance to care for the world on God's behalf. And finally, it means we can actually choose to stop playing by the world's rules for success and live by this deeper, more lasting sense of value.
And so that leaves us with a final question to chew on. It's really a challenge to ourselves to look at our own lives, our relationships, our goals, the little choices we make every day, and to just ask, is my life reflecting this incredible identity? Am I actually living like God's coworker, taking care of His world and His people? It's a big question, but it's definitely worth thinking about.